Hot Mic is brought to you by Red Wing Shoes of Fargo. Built to last. 3003 Main Avenue, Fargo.
Hot Mic with Dom Izzo.
Really? Really, Dom?
No. I like what Dom's doing.
Okay.
Dom Izzo.
Jeez, come on, Dom. What do you think I am, a magician?
Yeah, I'm fired up, Dom. What else could I say?
Absolutely. It was great to get on the field, and then Dom came up to me, and I'm trying to walk away from me. I just wanted to enjoy myself out there.
Hot Mic.
Great job.
There's got to be some kind of intelligent question about something.
Coach Dom Izzo, WDAY in Fargo, North Dakota.
Can you give me a layup or something?
Hot Mic. Presented by Northwestern Mutual.
That program is second to none.
On the networks of WDAY.
You know, if it's not about sports, I find it very hard to concentrate.
Here's Dom Izzo.
Good Monday morning. We start our show with what a wild scene in Buffalo, New York. It was not like this for the Bison of the NCAA tournament, but for the Buffalo Sabres, they go nuts. Their first playoff game in 15 years, they found themselves down 2-0 to the Boston Bruins with 7 minutes to go in the third period until Tage Thompson, who played on the U.S. gold medal winning hockey team, makes it 2-1. 4 minutes to go. Thompson out in front, scores again. It's bedlam in Buffalo. They love their Sabres. It's tied at 2. Over a minute later, Martin Samuelsson risks it home. Place is going crazy. The roof going to come off the KeyBank Arena. It's 3-2 Sabres at that point. They get an empty netter. They come back and score 4 goals in the third period and beat Boston in the first playoff game in the city in 15 years. They win it last night, 4-2. And with that, we say good morning, everybody, and happy Monday. Welcome to a new week here on our show on the 20th day of April, 2026. I am Dom Izzo, host of said show. Welcome back to our lovely studios here in the basement of WDAY. Great to be with everybody here on a Monday. Hope you all had a great weekend. Enjoyed the mid-February temperatures that we had. But we're roaring back to 80 degrees by the middle of the week. That's how Jesse explained it perfectly on the news last night. That's how we get to the temperature average that we get in April, because we get 30 and then we get 80. And I'm not a great math mind, but the median of that would somehow get us to around 60 degrees, which is going to be the case by the time April is done. So we'll get out there and enjoy it. It is NFL Draft Week. It is here. We will get that kickstarted in a big-time way today. I believe we're going to have all of the top prospects that at least we're going to get drafted here will be on the show this week. Cole Payton's going to be on tomorrow. We believe we're going to have Bryce Lance on Wednesday. The 7th annual Hot Mic mock draft will be scheduled for Thursday for the opening day. And we got a full week of that, so looking forward to all that. Again, Jack Strand from MSUM may very well get his name called by the time Saturday afternoon is done. So we are locked and loaded for what should be a dynamite week of coverage here on the big show. Looking forward to that. We'll unpack everything from the Stanley Cup playoffs and the NBA playoffs. The Wild, great. Wolves, not so much on Saturday. Both playing again tonight. Get your energy drinks now, folks. Wild started at 8:30, which is, we're used to that. Wolves have a 9:30. And with television, the slide is going to happen here. So the Wolves aren't going to start till 9:50 tonight. Easy. Because the Knicks play before. That game's not going to get done at 9:30. Just get it out of the way right now. We're expecting at least a 9:50 tip for that one tonight in Denver. And if they lose tonight and it's not pretty, then it may be curtains for the old Wolves. We'll get to that in just a little bit. We'll also unpack a big football weekend here locally. We'll get to that coming up later on in the show. Now, when we left you on Friday, we had our guy Corey Provis with us as the Twins were getting ready to open up a weekend set with Cincinnati. They had come off their big series with Boston, won the first 2. The Red Sox got them in Game 3 on Wednesday, had the day off. And then they ran into some pretty good pitching from Cincinnati, which is what we were talking about with Corey on Friday. The Reds could hurl it, and they really weren't hitting the ball all that well. And that's exactly what took place on Friday It's what took place on Saturday. So now the Twins are just looking to salvage one of the weekend set with the Reds. And once again, Twins starting pitching, not an issue. Bullpen, big-time issue. The bats were good to start. Victor Caratini will line to center. That'll bring in the opening run of the game. Give the Twins an early lead. It was still 1-0. Josh Bell gets into one here with a base hit in the bottom of the third. Reds will kick it around in the infield, allow another run to come in to score. Caratini delivers with another RBI, his second of the game, with a base hit to right. That scores Trevor Larnach. It's 3-0 Minnesota through 3 innings. We go to the 6th. Bailey Ober dealing his best performance by a mile this season. 6 1/3, 3 hits, 1 run. It wasn't earned. He struck out 10 Reds. But the bullpen frittered it away. Andrew Morris is pitching, the rookie. It's a 3-1 game in the top of the 9th until that is changed off the bat there. Of Friedel, who will tie it up at 3 with that base hit to the gap. It's 3-all. Cincinnati goes in front now 4-3 until Austin Martin delivers in the bottom of the 9th inning to score. James Outman, who comes around. Little 9th inning magic from Minnesota and sends the game to extra innings. Ellie De La Cruz is on at second base. You cannot give him any sort of inch because the Twins decide to play like Little League defense in the top of the 10th inning. De La Cruz is maybe the fastest guy in the majors. It wasn't pretty, but he scores the go-ahead run. Then the Reds get some insurance off the bat of Rhys Hines with a base hit. That's going to score 2 in the top of the 10th. All of a sudden now Cincinnati leads it 7-4 going to the home half. Brooks Lee up at the plate with 2 runners on. The Reds decide to challenge this on a 2-2 pitch. It ends up being called a strike. Game is over. Reds win it 7-4 in 10 to sweep the series from Minnesota. Ober's great performance is lost because the bullpen, they asked Morris to go 2 innings for the rookie, and that was a bridge too far. Garrett Acton ends up taking the loss in relief. Former Twin great Emilio Pagan got the win, his second, as Cincinnati sweeps the series. The Twins drop to 500 at 11-11 on the season. Day off today, and then it's on for a road trip. They head to New York City, lovely Queens and Flushing Meadows. They've got a date with the New York Metropolitans coming up tomorrow. I will save my anger to the Mets coming up later on in the show. For those that follow baseball, they and the Royals have the worst record in Major League Baseball on April the 20th. It's great to know that the season is already over before we're even out of April. So that's great. But that's up next for Minnesota. Just real quick on the series. They lost 2 one-run games, 2-1 on Friday, 5-4 yesterday, on Saturday, and then obviously what happened 7-4 yesterday. Bullpen, major reason why. Taj Bradley went 6. After that, though, combination of guys couldn't get anybody out and led to the loss on Saturday, and then we saw what happened yesterday. So that maybe would have been predicted considering the Twins gutted their bullpen at the July trade deadline last year, but that's where they're at. Back to 500 and starting a road trip with the Mets and Tampa coming up this week. Now, we mentioned off the top of the show, it was a mixed bag of results for Minnesota sports fans. The Wolves got run out of the gym in the final 3 quarters in Denver. The Wild, though, just curb stomped the Dallas Stars Saturday afternoon. My family went out to dinner on Saturday, and the game was on one of the screens behind me. And the Jackman was giving me periodic updates. It was 1-0, Wild in the second. And then before you know it, the avalanche of goals came, and the Wild end up rolling Dallas by a 6-1 score. 6-1. Not sure anybody saw that happening and what had happened. Because, again, these teams have played close games throughout the year, and it was not close. Quinn Hughes came back, as many expected he would. He'd been sick the last couple of days prior to the game on Saturday. Kaprizov scored. Matt Boldy was really good. I mean, it was over. It was over, by the way, because the Stars decided to wear those uniforms, which is a ripoff of the North Stars jerseys, and second of what the Dallas Stars wore when they won the Cup way back when in 1999. I digress. Joel Eriksson Ek had two. It was a butt kicking. So the series now resumes tonight. Game 2 coming up, as I mentioned, 8:30. Now, I called it last week. I would start Jesper Wallstedt. The Wild did that. Wallstedt had 27 saves. You're not going to see any of those because it was all goals all the time in the game on Saturday. Game 2 tonight, 8:30 from Dallas. Here's the thing. The Wild have never went up 2-0 in a series. In the history of their franchise, they have never gone up 2-rip. Think about that. I mean, they've come back from 3-1. Saw that happen a couple times over in that magical run to the Western Conference Finals now 20-some-odd years ago. It was 23 years ago. But they've never gone up 2-rip. Certainly, things would change if Minnesota's able to do that tonight. You saw the series schedule come back to St. Paul. Game 3 comes up on Wednesday. Finally, we get a day where both the Minnesota teams don't intersect with one another. That should be rocking at Grand Casino Arena for that one. Here's the updated NHL playoff brackets as we roll through here now through the opening games of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Mentioned with Minnesota up 1-0. Vegas won last night over Utah. That was a fun game. Colorado pretty much dominated the Kings in their matchup. The Flyers stole Game 1 Saturday night against the Penguins on the road. Carolina beat Ottawa. The Canadiens won in overtime over Tampa, and we showed you what the Sabres did with their win over Boston. The Ducks and the Oilers are the only series yet to start. That will come tonight. Meanwhile, in the NBA, the Wolves lost a game that they were ahead by 12. I mean, watch it early on, and I mean early. They look great, and then the last 3 quarters of the game happened. And it didn't look so great. As Denver gets a triple-double from Jokic. Murray went crazy, and he hit all of his free throws. That's another thing that happened is the Wolves kept sending the Nuggets to the line. So Game 2 tonight. Then they'll have a couple days off because the NBA loves to stretch out the first round. So off days Tuesday and Wednesday. And then Game 3 will be Thursday at Target Center with Game 4 set for Saturday on WDAY, and we hope that's not a clean sweep because right now the different levels of emotion, considering the Wild and the Wolves, is about as opposite as it gets. Wild fans are on cloud 9 thinking they could sweep Dallas. Meanwhile, Wolves fans are thinking they may get swept by Denver. It just feels different. It just didn't feel like they had the switch to flip like they've done before and just take off and dominate. That did not happen in any stretch of the game on Saturday. This is the West bracket. San Antonio dominated Portland. We'll show you that at the end of the show, what the Spurs did in the crowd. If you missed it last night, if you're not a big NBA fan, what the Spurs did last night was really, really neat. Mentioned the Nuggets are up 1-0 on Minnesota. The Lakers beat the Rockets without Kevin Durant on Saturday night, and the Suns, lost to the Thunder convincingly to start their playoff series. Only one road team won in Game 1. That was the Orlando Magic, who had to win the play-in game to get to the main tournament. They go on the road and beat Detroit, the number 1 seed, so they stole home court advantage there. Cavs beat the Raptors. The Knicks won over the Hawks, and the Celtics won by $1 billion over the 76ers in the opening game of the NBA playoffs. So 3 more games coming up in hoops tonight. Cavs and the Raptors will play. The Hawks and the Knicks will play, and the Wolves are playing, as we mentioned, late tonight against Denver. So fun week. I mean, you had no shortage of things going on. It wasn't that warm to be outside. If you decided to go golf this weekend, happy to you there, because that was nasty to be outside doing that. But there was no shortage of at least events to watch. I will say this, by the way, because I had a few of these messages coming in Saturday with the Wolves game. Asking me where the Wolves game was on TV. Knew that was going to happen. It was on Amazon Prime on Saturday. And this is going to get down the TV rabbit hole that I'm not sure many maybe more care about than I think. But I'm really interested to see what happens for restaurants, bars, and hotels to figure out the Amazon Prime bit. You know, because YouTube has a deal with restaurants, bars to stream Sunday Ticket, because we talked about that once we heard that Sunday Ticket was going to go to YouTube. How is that going to affect, you know, all bars and restaurants that have that on Sundays? They made a deal work there. Now, because nowhere I was out Saturday night, the Wolves game wasn't on, because most of these places don't have deals with Amazon Prime yet to stream the games or get it on their channel. Same thing for hotels. I know at least 2 friends of mine that were traveling that wanted to watch the game on Saturday and couldn't because no hotel has Amazon Prime yet. And that's, I know, first world issues, but if you want to watch the game and you're out or going to be traveling and know full well that these leagues are going to give more and more games to streaming, that's something that's got to get figured out. Because I'm sure that establishments would love to have hit me up here in town. I don't know if anybody in town had the Wolves game on. I don't know if they have deals for that. Frankly, that would surprise me if they do. Because if you were out Saturday afternoon, if you're going to be out tonight, granted I know it's Monday, or next Saturday, you know, you'll be able to see the game because it's NBC and ABC. But there are going to be more games later this week that are on Prime. In fact, I believe the next couple of nights. I know Thursday definitely is Amazon. That, to me, is really interesting to see how they're going to finagle that going forward. Football is easy, but I'm sure there are some that would say, hey, I'd like to be able to watch the game and couldn't on Saturday. I'm real interested to see how that goes forward because they're not turning back. The ratings for the NBA were as high as they've ever been. Granted, more was on broadcast TV. That's thanks to NBC having more games. But Amazon, and it's not to say anything, Amazon's coverage is awesome. I really enjoy it. But if you're out and about, it's really hard to find or impossible to find, especially here locally. We got a packed show coming up for you here today on this Monday to start NFL Draft Week. Our guest lineup is brought to us by Northwestern Mutual. We'll salute our best of the weekend coming up here in just a few minutes, including a game in the Summit League that made national headlines. That's coming up in just a few minutes. At 9:35, we'll visit with UND head football coach Eric Schmidt. We haven't had Schmidt on since the season wrapped. This past weekend, UND had spring football wrap up for the last month. Now we'll look ahead to 2026. We'll do that with Eric coming up at 9:35. At 10 o'clock, Sam Herder moves from his usual time slot. Kolpak is unavailable today, so we had to do a little finagling with our schedule. Sam will join us at 10 to give us ready for the potential FCS guys. Who's the first one going to be off the board? Will it be Bryce Lance? We'll talk with Sam about that at 10 o'clock. And at 10:35, Randy Hedberg will join us for a big week for him because later this week, whether it be Friday or Saturday, North Dakota State will have a 5th consecutive starting quarterback selected in the National Football League draft. Let me say that again. NDSU will have a quarterback selected for the 5th consecutive time in the NFL draft, starting way back when, 10 years ago when Carson Wentz got selected. If you would have told me in April of 2016 when I was in Chicago that the next 5 Bison starters, or next 4, counting Carson, would be selected in the NFL draft, I would have given you a year's worth of paychecks on that. There's no way but Hedberg has been front and center at all of them. We'll chat with Randy. He's going to be at Cole Payton's draft party this weekend. Speaking of Cole, he will join us tomorrow on the show to chat about now it is here. Draft week has arrived, and he's been a busy man. So we'll chat with Randy about that to wrap up the show at 10:35. That and a heck of a lot more here on a busy Monday. We'll come back. We'll salute our best of the weekend, which included a fun weekend at Shields Arena. Hot Mike is off and rolling. We're back after this. Hey, saluting what we've seen over the last couple of days, including a historic baseball game, which we're going to get to in a second. First, a shout-out and congratulations to the Bison softball team. Yesterday, their games with Kansas City were scheduled for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Again, the weather was just not great Friday nor Saturday, so that moved it to a doubleheader yesterday. Bison won a nail-biter in Game 1. Game 2, no nail-biter there, but a heck of a game for senior Bella Dean, who's been NDSU's most consistent player probably all season long. It's a 7-1 Bison lead as we pick up the game yesterday. Dean at the time is 3 for 3 at the plate. Steps up here, and she's going to end it with one swing of the bat on the bottom of the fifth inning with a grand slam. 4 for 4 day at the plate. First career 4-hit game of her career. First for a Bison since March of 2025. Hit 5 RBIs in the game. Second career grand slam as the Bison roll to an 11-1 victory over the Roos and sweep the doubleheader. They'll wrap up with a game today at 11 a.m. up at Theraldson Park. But on a cold day, got to feel pretty good to end it like that. Get out of there early because you know you got to come back and play again today. So congrats to Bella. The Bison with the doubleheader sweep get to 6-5 in Summit League play. Right in the middle of things here. We'll see what if they're able to move up after they got swept by St. Thomas in the games we televised last Wednesday. They pick up the doubleheader sweep yesterday. All right, now I'm going to set this up before we show you the craziness of what happened in St. Paul on Saturday. So Northern Colorado and St. Thomas are playing a weekend series in the Twin Cities. Now, they were scheduled to play a game Friday that was to be made up from a game in March that was to be played in Greeley but got postponed because of wildfire smoke. So they moved the game to St. Paul and started the game Friday afternoon. Had to start actually a little bit late because of weather in the area. So the two teams play, and the game goes to the 11th inning, and the game has to be stopped because there are no lights at the field at St. Thomas. I'm just telling you the facts. So it's postponed because of darkness, right? So they have to come back and resume the game Saturday. So they play the 12th inning. They play the 13th. They play the 14th, the 15th, 16th, still no winner. The 17th, the 18th, the 19th, Northern Colorado scores 2 runs. And at the bottom of the 19th, St. Thomas answers and scores 2 runs. So we play the 20th. And we get to the 21st is where we're going to pick the game up. Now remember, Northern Colorado is playing in St. Paul, but they are the home team, okay? So it's 7-7 in the bottom of the 21st inning. That's where we'll pick it up here. The bases are loaded for Northern Colorado. So base hit will win the game. There are 2 outs in the inning, right? Nolan Kemp is on the mound for St. Thomas. An imperceptible gesture there. Lance Vaughn, the home plate umpire, calls a balk on Kemp and ends the game with a walk-off balk. And watch No one can believe the game is over on the St. Thomas dugout. Northern Colorado celebrated like they won the World Series, and rightfully so, because the game is finally over. Watch again. This is a tough angle to look. We'll give you 2 looks at it. It's imperceptible gesture here that Kemp made. If he came set and then started again, either way, the umpire called him on a balk, and that won the game. It's unbelievable that that's how it ended. Again, if you watch it again, watch the pitcher. What does he do here that is causing the balk? He goes set there, maybe just a quick step on the mound. Either way, that ended the game. It made national headlines this weekend. It's the longest game in Summit League baseball history, tied for the 8th longest in the history of Division I. The 2 teams combined to use 9 pitchers, a combined 33 strikeouts and 27 walks, 712 pitches thrown in 21 innings. And then they had to come back and play another game after it because they had to play the actual game that was scheduled for Saturday. That one got suspended, as you'd imagine, because of darkness. And they finished that one up yesterday. St. Thomas has had a tough year. They're actually behind North Dakota State in the Summit League baseball standings. Teams 5 and 6 will miss out on the tournament, which is ironic. St. Thomas is hosting said event, and they're not going to be in it unless something crazy happens. The Buys are going to need some help to even make it into the 4-team field. Crazy game. I've never seen it. And again, it wasn't even a noticeable move that happened to decide the game, but that's how Northern Colorado wins the longest baseball game in Summit League history. Finally, a shout out to our friends in South Fargo who are at it again. I've done this for the last couple years. I continue to be amazed by the crowds that go see the Fargo Force play hockey. Over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, they open up the Western Conference semifinals against the Sioux Falls Stampede, or excuse me, the Sioux City Musketeers. Let me get my Sioux right, because the Musketeers have some great jerseys. And all the Force did was dominate in 2 games. They won on Saturday. They came back yesterday, got a shorthanded goal to eventually take a 5-4 lead. They would go on and win it 7-4 over Sioux City. 3,607 fans were there last night. On a Sunday, game started at, I think, 5 last night. 3,600 were in attendance. They'll have a chance to go for the sweep on Thursday. Look at that place. That's fantastic. Every year we do this same story. Every year I'm blown away by the level of support this team gets. They'll have a chance to sweep out Sioux City on Thursday to go to the Western Conference Finals. Dominant weekend there in South Fargo. Congrats to the Force. Brett Skinner, who the head coach, was one of the finalists for the St. Cloud State job, then going to former Force Nick Oliver. Winning again. As I mentioned, Game 3 comes up Thursday night, 7 o'clock in Sioux City. That's awesome stuff. It's just, they market the team well. They have a diehard section of fans, much like the Redhawks do. But when the Redhawks are playing their most important games, quote-unquote, the playoff games, it's in September. Nobody goes. Here, where the Force are playing their most important games, on a Sunday. Think about that. Sunday at 5 o'clock, they had 3,600 people in South Fargo last night. That's pretty damn impressive. Congrats to them. We'll see if they can get the sweep coming up on Thursday. We'll break. We come back. We'll chat some ball. Eric Schmidt will join us as UND has officially put a bow on spring ball. Look ahead now to the fall. That's coming up when Hot Mike returns after this. Welcome back, everybody. Monday morning show off and rolling. It is a big week for college football because it's draft week, where we're going to find out guys that maybe you've never heard of are going to get picked come either Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. For those of us that follow the college game exclusively, it's a pretty cool week, especially in this part of the world to see what's going to happen here. We're also wrapping up spring football. North Dakota State will have it wrapped up on Friday. Saturday, the University of North Dakota put a bow on things for the second spring for head coach Eric Schmidt, who joins us to get our week started here on a Monday. It's great to see you, Schmitty. We were just visiting off air. I think we fixed college football during the commercial break. But give me the lowdown on how spring football went up in Grand Forks.
Yeah, I thought our guys did a great job, really all the way back to January. We talk a lot, Dom, up here is making sure that we have a year-round calendar and that we follow that thing, that guys do a great job of being precise and getting the goals out of each part of the year that we want to be able to get. And I think, the spring practice part of it obviously becomes a really heavy football investment time. You get different, periods that you're working on, maybe physical development, speed training, strength training. Well, this is a big window for us to find out, who can play football, like real American football, right? Where you're blocking and tackling and doing all those things. And our guys did a good job. I think there's always that give and take of, hey, you got to get your football team ready. You got to be able to evaluate them, but yet you want to try to stay as healthy as you can, during spring ball too as well. So we were able to accomplish those things. I think we 300 and some plays of going live, maybe, right around there. And then also being able to, for the most part, keep guys healthy. Nobody that'll, do anything as far as missing times besides some bumps and bruises and those types of things. So yeah, all in all, it was exactly what we had hoped for.
Tell me how different this was, because last year, this time, everyone's wondering what quarterback, what's going to happen at QB. How different was this around when you didn't have to worry about that?
Yeah, good question. I think, for the staff and for myself, I think, coming in, we knew exactly, how we wanted to operate, how we wanted to, things to go. So I think a little bit even more for the players, like a lot of us were familiar, obviously from maybe a while ago, 7-8 years ago, but had some familiarity with, how things ran here and, just how you were going to be able to use the different facilities and all that kind of stuff. So I think it was more for the players, probably a year ago, just, going through the way we wanted to do it the first time. I think obviously for them, I think there was, a less anxiety. They understood what the expectation was. And then, like you said, I think, just the roster being able to now have really good relationships built with these guys, to have a good sample on what their strengths and what their weaknesses were, and then being able to really, go to work on each guy and really try to work on the developmental piece here. So anytime I think we brought our whole, entire, minus Simon, we brought our whole, quarterback room back, which is big. I mean, the hardest thing to do in football right now, in college football, is if you have a really good quality backup quarterback, is to be able to keep that guy on your roster, right? And for us to be able to, Javon started games for us when I was at San Diego State. And for him to, that was something that, it could have went either way there as far as him staying or leaving. So to keep him there, Jack Sulik there, and then we had Brooks Hendrickson was an early enrollee for us. We had 5 of those guys show up early too as well. So even his development here, and I think we went through it this morning, probably had over 100 and some reps too as well. So just to be able to get him, that's why you come in, because you tell those guys, hey, we'll rep you, if you come in early. And for him to be able to get those reps is going to help him in the fall too as well. So I think that whole room, just the stability and the growth that we've been able to see here is really big.
Eric, with Danny being back, was that like putting a glove back on again, or what did you want to get out of this with Danny being back now calling plays?
I just think number one, Dom, like he's a proven commodity, like he did it at a really high level when he was in this league before, and then obviously had some opportunities to be able to leave. I think it says a lot about, some of the other coaches in the conference that, hey man, we take you, type of deal. Like we see the talent that you have at what you're doing. And then, for him to go and have to install it. I think the best thing that you can do in your growth is have to take your system, something you believe in, and then have to go install that at a different spot. And obviously you have to do it then from, the base teachings of everything. You can't assume anything. There wasn't like, when Danny went to Washington State, that all those guys had been with him for 8, 10, 12 years, and they knew exactly what the system was. They hadn't been with him, all that long at all. So he had to go and teach not just the players, but the coaches hey, this is how we were going to do it. This is, the best way I think, that we need to do it. And then you tweak some things, you take input from other guys in the room and you build it from there. So you can just tell like just the confidence that he has, the belief, and hey, I've been able to, really, take some things and show other people that, hey, this works. And then it prove that it works. And then maybe some of the other things that he's, he was able to learn along the way, different ways to, tweak a route, teach a tight end to be able to do something different in a run scheme, those types of things. I think he's just grown so much. It's been, really since 2019 that we were together. So I think his growth since then has been, really, really a huge amount of growth since the last time we were together.
Was there a position group you kept your eyes on the most? I know you're looking at everybody, but was there one like, this is the one I'm going to focus on all of spring?
Yeah, I mean, if we go to each side of the ball, I think wide receiver was a spot a year ago where we thought like, hey, we needed to get better. I think, just playmakers in college football. I talk a lot, Dom, just, hey, there's a lot of guys that can, get the yards that the offense is designed to get. People see like, hey, you get open in a certain zone coverage, there's going to be strengths and weaknesses. Teams are playing man to man and you work crossing routes or something like that to get guys open. Like that's great. Like you're getting the yards that the offense is designed to get. What we really feel like we needed to find was, hey, some guys that could go get their own yards, right? Make people miss after they catch footballs, break tackles, those types of things. So I feel good. I think, just overall, we've raised the talent level in that room. Caleb Goodlow came in. He was at Bowling Green last year. I wasn't sure. It's really tough sometimes in the portal when you take guys who haven't played yet at another spot. Like we're big into, hey, if we're going to take guys, they got to be guys who have proven it, at that place. But there was a relationship there between him and Coach KJ May, our receivers coach. So that was helpful there. Cam Weir was at Washington State a year ago. So Danny got to be able to see him. He actually grew up, went to the same schools that my kids were going to when we were in Washington. Okay. So he was a Seattle kid. So we had some familiarity there. So just that room, I think dang, like we felt like a year ago, he's probably a year away yet. Like he was a young enrollee when he came from Four Winds. Like, he'll be in his third year of college. I don't know if he's 20 yet. He'll turn 20 here, I think, coming up. So, I mean, that's not only is it a huge jump from, anywhere in high school football, but especially, Dane coming from the high school program he did, like, I mean, and to be able to do what he's done up to this point, I think there's definitely a different, just belief and confidence in him running around here, this spring too as well. So just with the development of the current guys and then the influx of some talented guys coming in, I feel like that was a position I wanted to really look at, and I feel like we're capable there, more capable there than we have been, a year ago.
The players, obviously running backs won as well. Sawyer moves on. How much you look at that as well as a position like, okay, what do we have here for the fall?
Yeah, Ben, I feel good about that spot. Honestly, I think we have. 4 guys, really 3 for sure. I think Griffin Broderick's starting to put his name up there in the mix. He's a Minot High kid. Like, I mean, just as a big physical, he's the biggest back in our room, Dom. He's 230 pounds and he'll run behind his pads. But, I think Colton Burnell at the end of last year started to do some things as a in between the tackles type of guy. One cut guy that was, really showed up at the end of the season, especially down in the playoff games that we played. He had his best games. And then Chuck Langama, we're high on. We think he can be a really, really good back in this league. And he really, the last 5 practices of spring, did some really good things. Now he's still a young player that needs to get more detailed in a lot of different areas, but you can see the talent there. And there's some things that he does that, I think are special. And then we brought Matt Lawson in. He's an interesting story. He was at Illinois State as a freshman and gained close to 500 yards as a true freshman. And then they had a running back coach change, and that a lot of times can, change relationships and whatever. I'm not saying one way or the other, but it just, it wasn't the same for Matt. And then to be able to get him out of the portal was a huge get. He was, a lot of teams that he had opportunities to be able to go to, and he's he's a guy we feel strongly about too as well. Like you can see it, what it's supposed to look like here in spring practice. So I think all those guys, will be a little bit different. Sawyer may be more of a, as a home run type threat off of it. These guys, I think, are guys who will read it right, who will break some tackles more in the box, who are guys that are true physical power guys that when they get in the open field will be hard tackles too as well. So I like what they bring to the table.
A couple minutes left here with Eric Schmidt from UND. We were talking about this off air. How much better are you sleeping this month as opposed to last year with the portal not being a thing? You don't have to worry about anybody leaving right now through the portal because there's no spring window.
It's awesome. I think just the stability that you have now, guys, it's awesome for the players too, right? Like those guys know exactly, hey, who's going to be, on the depth chart, who's not going to be here. A lot of times that can be, some of the deciding factors too as well. Like, hey, are they bring somebody in, and does that affect me as far as my playing time and my future too as well? So I think on both sides, doing it this way, there's a lot of stability. We can have, true exit meetings with guys and know those guys are going to be here, talk to them about here's the schedule, for the rest of the school year here. We got school, that's one thing. These guys still go to school and study and are getting degrees. So, finishing that part of it up and then giving them a little time with family and friends in May. And then, June 1st, we're rocking and rolling. So, I love it. I think it's the right way, to do things as far as, having one portal window. Just as far as the stability, it gets us our team at the earliest time that we can get our team. And then we have, 9 months from there to be able to go build a team and get them ready to go for the season. So I'm a huge fan of it. And I think, even the guys on our team, our roster is a huge fan of it too, as well. They get to know exactly who the guys are in their position groups and what they're going to have to do to be able to get on the field come August.
I got to ask as well, this is going to be the first year the FCS season is going to move up to what week 0 was. FBS is going to do it next year. You've been part of the biggest games, which I can't remember how late it was when you were at Washington when you were playing the national championship game. January 15th, 16th? How do we not have it so late? How do we move it up?
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of that, and we talked about that before. I think football has always been a fall semester sport. I think we need to keep it a fall semester sport.
Yeah.
I don't think, it was different before with the bowl games and all that kind of stuff as far as having a huge break. It was tradition that way. Well, now, the college football playoff obviously has taken, the center stage there as far as what happens after the regular season. So I just think going, week by week by week and finishing this thing up, sometime in really the first 10 days of January, first 11 days in January makes a ton of sense. And then now kids, if they want to leave, it's, they're not just backs against the wall as far as the academic calendar.
Yeah.
Their season's over. They can experience the whole season with their team. And then they can make a decision after that where they want to be at, the following season. So I think it's a step in the right direction. I think now we're figuring out kind of how all this things works, the pros and the cons of, kind of what we made college football right now. And now we can try to make it better for the players.
I got an email to ask you here before I let you go. To ask, Tom, if you ask Coach Schmidt, with NDSU's move to the Mountain West, how has that changed? Will it change anything recruiting-wise statewide, I guess, in North Dakota? Give me your thought. I haven't asked you about that. Does that change anything of the dynamics now with them being an FBS school and you guys still an FCS?
No, I think it's us and them and any kid in the state, right, off of it. And there's still, I think, pros and cons to both sides of it. It's, as much as, some people want to probably beat their chest and say, hey, we're this now and you're that now and all that kind of stuff. I still think at the end of the day, we're going to be competing against each other for forever. And, that's, I think when you look at the in-state kids, I think most of those guys, obviously, we know them, they know them. And we're trying to figure out who are the guys that fit here in Grand Forks and who are the guys I'm sure they're feeling the same way that fit in Fargo.
It's great to see you, bud. Thanks so much for doing this. I know you got to hit the road here. We'll catch up again during the spring, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks, Dom.
Good to see you, bud. There he goes. Eric Schmidt joining us as UND officially puts a bow on spring football over the weekend. Home opener, season opener, August the 27th. That is the first date we can play football, that Thursday against the Long Island Sharks. That is the first game out of the chute to start the college football season at the Alerus Center. We'll break. We come back. We'll put a bow on hour one. Sam Herder coming up in our second hour, talking on the FCS draftable guys. Randy Hedberg also coming up in hour two as well. Back on Hot Mic here on WDAY Extra right after this. All right, welcome back, everybody. Wrapping up our first hour. Thanks to Eric Schmidt for giving us a few minutes there to wrap up our first hour. Good stuff there on UND football. If you missed it over the weekend, Brett McMurphy from On3 Network, who we've had on when we were chatting North Dakota State and the Mountain West, broke a little bowl news over the weekend. That's the next thing we're keeping our eyes on. Obviously, May 7th, I believe, is when the Oversight Committee meets to determine if NDSU and Sacramento State are going to be postseason eligible immediately, which means Mountain West and MAC championship available, immediately eligible as well. McMurphy reported 2 more bowl games will be on the slate for 2026. One is the return of the Poinsettia Bowl, which now will get us the determination of how do we pronounce that correctly. Is it Poinsettia or Poinsettia? Which is in San Diego. Last time it was held, Josh Allen was playing for Craig Bowl in Wyoming. I remember because we showed highlights of that game on the news that night. That was the last time it happened. It was 2016, but it's coming back. And McMurphy is reporting that it will feature the champion of the Mountain West against the champion of the Pac-12. Because the Mountain West champion previously had gone to the L.A. Bowl. That bowl went away after this past year. I think Boise State and Washington played in that game in December at SoFi Stadium. So the Mountain West champion would go to San Diego, it looks like, to play against the champion of the Pac-12. McMurphy also reports that a bowl game is coming in Puerto Rico and will be a matchup of group of 6 programs, according to McMurphy. And also, the Xbox Bowl in Frisco is back again. That replaced the Bahamas Bowl last year. That was played in the Star in Frisco at the Cowboys facility. I believe UNLV went to that game. So here you have it for you Bison fans out there wondering. And I'm of the mindset they got that far down the road that it's going to get signed off on, this proposal to be immediately eligible. If North Dakota State can get to 6 wins this upcoming fall, then there's a bowl game in Hawaii. There's a bowl game in Boise. There's a bowl game in Tucson. Bowl game in Frisco. Bowl game in San Diego, as we now know. A bowl game in Albuquerque. So there are destinations out there. And there's a couple other ones, and we'll get in the weeds on this. I'm going to write something up on Inform about it later today of what's to come. But the Mountain West champion likely heading to the Poinsettia Bowl and San Diego. The bowls and the dates, networks will all be announced sometime this summer. Stay tuned. That'll be a red letter date here on this show. We never used to care about it. Now we do. That'll be coming up in a few months. Let's break. We come back. NFL Draft Week has arrived. Who are the FCS guys who we're going to see off the board? Our guy Sam Herter will join us on that and a bunch of stuff as we start hour number 2 on a Monday morning. We're back after this.
This is Hot Mike. Hot Mike. On the networks of WDAY. Here's Dom Izzo.
Welcome back, everybody. Ready to start hour 2 here on a football Monday. NFL Draft Week has officially arrived. For you nerds out there, the countdown clock is on, I know at least on ESPN, as they count down to the opening round on Thursday. We don't expect any FCS guys to go in round 1. I only say that because we've gotten used to FCS guys going in round 1. Obviously, Gray Zabel went in the first round last year, but the wait shouldn't be long on day 2. Our guy Sam Herter joins us on, to start our second hour. I appreciate his flexibility here to lead us off on what is a busy week for those that, Sam, that don't pay attention to college football, that are NFL rubes, are going to find out the new additions to their teams, and there's more than a handful of FCS guys that are going to get picked starting probably Friday.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting this year with how many FCS guys hear their names called. We usually see double digits. The only years that the FCS hasn't had double-digit draft picks was in 2020 and 21. That's when COVID really messed up with the whole pre-draft process. But there's usually been double double digits. Last year there was 15, the year before that 12, the year before that 11. So I expect it to be in that 10 to 12 range as far as number of FCS guys that do get picked. And then I think day 2, one for sure, and that's Bryce Lance. Could be definitely picked up on day 2, which is rounds 2 and 3. But I also think Caleb Proctor, Jeff Caldwell, and Charles Demings, 3 more guys that potentially have the chance to have their names called on day 2. So I think, especially that Friday, could be a busy day for the FCS.
How much is this for fans? Like, you go to your website that follow FCS football only occasionally, maybe when they see the title game on. Are they finding out about these guys literally this week? I think it's actually pretty high, don't you?
Yeah, it is. And I mean, we have Google Analytics, and so we can see the live traffic. And it's whenever an FCS guy gets drafted, usually our traffic spikes up because people are searching, whatever guy they're searching Eric Hunter, Morgan State, like, who is this guy?
Yes.
And there's some articles out about him. So yeah, it is always interesting when maybe not some household names get selected, and fans are trying to figure out who these guys are. And the FCS, they usually find some pretty good success when it comes to getting into the NFL. There's even a decent amount of guys who end up being UDFAs who still find their way onto the field in the NFL. So the number of draft picks from the FCS has gone down, but I still feel like the FCS has sent some guys to the NFL that have made some pretty big impacts.
Let me read something from Mel Kiper yesterday, posted about his favorite guys or guys he likes at each position. He wrote about Caleb Proctor at defensive tackle. Says Proctor doesn't have ideal size for an interior defender at 6'2" and 291, so he's a bit of a tweener, but he's quick as a cat, as we saw during his 4.79 second 40-yard dash at the Combine, which we are showing right now. He can get interior push, 9 sacks, 13 tackles for loss last year at Southeastern Louisiana. He expects he's going to go probably sometime on day 3. What do we make of him and Charles Demings? We have video of him. He played at Stephen F. Austin last year.
Yeah, I would guess that Proctor is going to be the second FCS guy taken behind Bryce Lance. But Proctor, I think, really impressed with his athleticism at the NFL Combine. He graded out as the number 4 defensive tackle as far as his athleticism score. Ran well, showed great agility and explosiveness. And like you said, like, he's not the biggest guy, 6'2", 291 pounds, so a bit undersized, but he is very quick, very athletic, and he has a lot of FCS film where he dominated, but he also had a really, really good game against LSU where he had 5 tackles, 3 TFLs, and 2 sacks. And LSU was keying in on him because, LSU knew they were going to, dominate that game, but they said, all right, let's not let this Proctor guy kind of dictate what we're doing, but he still had a really good game. And that's obviously the very first piece of film that NFL scouts are going to turn on it for an FCS player, is what you do against an FBS opponent. And he played really well. And then Charles Demings from SFA, cornerback, really good size. He also showed out his athleticism at the NFL Combine. I could see him going early day 4, like in the fourth round on day 3, but he has a chance to maybe slide into that day 2, late 3rd round type of pick. But he's really seen his draft stock elevate throughout this draft process.
I've had repeated emails I have not answered here, so let's do it on this segment, asking me about Mark Gronowski. And what are you hearing? Is he going to get drafted? I think he's going to get a job somewhere, but will he get picked on Saturday?
I think he has a pretty good chance to be drafted. If not, he'll be a UDFA and he'll still sign an NFL contract. But the scouting service that I use is Draft Scout, and they have Gronowski going in the 6th round. He's the number 210 overall prospect in the draft, the number 11 quarterback in the draft. So I think he has a really good chance to be picked at some point on day 3.
Okay.
I don't know if, like, what he did at Iowa, I don't know if that necessarily, really moved the needle.
I don't think so either.
As far as his draft stock, but I think he showed enough at South Dakota State. And then he was also I believe he was at the Shrine Game, and he had a really good week at the Shrine Game. And I think if anything, if he does get selected, most people are going to point to what he did at that All-Star game to like kind of show that, okay, he solidified himself as a draft pick with what he did during that All-Star game.
How about, what are you hearing on Sopkowitz from Illinois State after his unbelievable postseason run? Is he going to get a sniff at all, or is he too small?
Yeah, I think he is if he's going to get selected, it'll probably be 6th to 7th rounds. Draft Scout has him as a 7th rounder. I think he definitely is going to get a shot because he's a great route runner. He has a really big catch radius as well, and he can make contested catches. So I definitely think he has a shot. He's also another guy that has risen the ranks a little bit. So I think he'll definitely get a shot. Once you get to that late day 3, it really is such a crapshoot on like guys you expect to be drafted and they slip out of the draft and they sign a UDFA. Then there's always 1 or 2 FCS guys that you don't necessarily expect to hear their names called. Like Tommy Mlott, like I don't know if we really expected him to be drafted last year. Then all of a sudden we hear his name called. So there's always a surprise late day 3, but I think Sopkowitz, I think he should be a draft pick, but if not, being a UDFA isn't the worst thing in the world either, because then you get to pick your team, you get to pick the best contract, you get to kind of pick the best situation for yourself. So Sopkowitz will definitely sign an NFL contract.
Tell us, you mentioned Eric Hunter's name from Morgan State. Why is his name flying up the boards here over the last week and a half? I've seen that his name consistently mentioned over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I'm honestly surprised he wasn't higher on the boards to start, because I've always liked Hunter. When I've done my top 25 returning FCS linebackers, I think he was number 2 last year, and then number 3 the year before. So he was always a very, very productive player at the FCS level. Then you look at his frame, he's like 6'3" to 6'4", 230 pounds. He can move very well, very, very productive, and disruptive, not only defending the run, but also defending the pass. So I thought he was an NFL guy from the start, but he was kind of in January, February, he was in that 7th, the UDFA range. Then I think his pro day is really when maybe he opened eyes where scouts said, okay, this guy is very athletic. And now I'm seeing 4th to 5th round for him. And so that's that would be great for him, great for Morgan State. Anytime there's an HBCU player drafted, that's always a really positive sign as well. Because I know they're really pushing to get their guys more exposure. And I think Hunter, he has an NFL level athleticism, NFL level frame. He has the production as well. So he's definitely a guy that I could see, getting off the board pretty early on day 3.
We're going to talk more about Cole Payton coming up here in about 20 minutes, but it certainly seems like he's going to go early on Saturday. This time last year, Sam, the talk up here, and we had it, you and I discussed this, was about him being the guy, taking over quarterback. Now he's going to be an early day 3 NFL draft pick. It's remarkable how things have changed in 365 days.
Yeah, it's wild to see just, how quickly he's risen up. And I mean, even last year at this time, like, I feel like he was somewhat on the NFL radar just as an athlete, just because everyone had seen what he did carrying the ball. So it's like, he'll be NDSU starting quarterback. He'll be pretty solid. And then, his athleticism will get him into the NFL. Maybe he'll be a tight end. But once we saw him live action throwing the ball, it's like, okay, this guy has an NFL level arm. And then I think really he elevated his stock during the season, and then once the draft process started with the All-Star game and the NFL Combine, and I think like throwing on a pro day, he showed out there well, or pretty strongly as well there. So yeah, just his rise has really been remarkable, and it kind of goes to show that, especially at the quarterback position, if you just stay patient, you get comfortable in the system, you don't transfer out, and maybe you only get 1 year to start, 2 years to start. It's better than kind of bopping around multiple places, because when you see quarterbacks go to 3 different schools in 5 years, like, it's really hard to get that system down. And we saw what Peyton did. I mean, he was patient, he knew the system, and he stepped in and had one of the best seasons in Bison quarterback history.
I want to talk a couple on-field stuff. We had a news dump out of Davis on Friday. Give us the lowdown on what came out of UC Davis and their football program.
Yeah, it was news that we've been kind of waiting on. I know UC Davis was certainly waiting on it for a while, and that was Rex Connors, who's an All-American safety, and then Porter Connors, who's an All-American linebacker for Davis brothers. And they've been waiting on trying to get an extra year of eligibility because they dealt with injuries last year, plus that Mercer game didn't count. Yeah. And so that kind of threw a wrench into things. Like, does that game count toward our eligibility? If not, which it shouldn't because it didn't count statistically, then we should get another year of eligibility because they both had season-ending injuries last year. And I reached out to UC Davis a few weeks ago to get an update on where things were at, and they told me they were still waiting to hear back. But the brothers were both going through school and kind of spring ball, expecting that they will be able to play. But they finally got that word that they will be back in 2026, and that's great news for UC Davis, who brings back a good chunk of their two deep from last year. And then you add in Rex, who I think is, if not the best, maybe a top 3 safety in all of FCS. And then, Porter was an all Big Sky linebacker a couple of years ago. So those are two key guys that Davis has coming back.
Also, more news out of Rio Grande Valley, where they made their debut last year. Their stadium getting even bigger for this coming year, right?
Yeah, and they had their debut last year, and they sold out of their season tickets and their suites like right away. And it's such an interesting program because they're obviously located in Texas, but they don't have any Division I football schools within I think it's a 3.5 hour. And so, I mean, they have some FCS schools when they're down south, they kind of get lost in the shuffle because there's so many other competing FBS programs with them, but they don't. UTRGV doesn't have to worry about that. So not a surprise that they sold a lot of tickets last year. Now they're expanding their seats, by a few thousand. I imagine that they'll probably sell those out as well. So that's a program definitely to keep an eye on. They have really nice facilities as well. I had their head coach on my podcast last offseason. He's a really well-known guy in that area, just with some of the connections he has recruiting wise. So that's definitely a program to keep an eye on. That's on the rise.
Yeah, I'm interested once they get going in their schedule, in their conference, get maybe some bigger games to see how they perform. We talked about them last year. They're hanging around with 6 or 7 wins, but they hadn't played a full D1 schedule. Once that happens, then I'll be intrigued to see how they do.
Yeah, and they competed better than I expected last year. And like you said, they had a few non-D1s on their schedule just because that was literally their debut year. But they are eligible for the playoffs right away because they were already an established Division I school. Right. They just added football and launched it last year with their first season. So, it was kind of funny seeing some of the comments after I tweeted that out saying, Conference USA is going to be calling them in 3-4 years as their newest FBS edition. But who knows? We'll see. But I think for the time being, it's an exciting FCS program that's certainly in investing. They have money. They have great support, like we talked about with their ticket sales. So certainly an exciting program that's on the rise.
I got one email to ask you about what the SWAC announced last week, that their football teams are not going to play anybody that's not D1 or D2. First off, I would get rid of the D2 part, but I know teams need games. That's the first time I can remember a conference making a decision like you are not playing games against lower division opponents, which I like.
Yeah, I think it's good because there are some NAI opponents out there, and then there's
D3.
I think I can't remember the one, but there's one program out there, the name is escaping me, but they've played 6 FCS opponents every year and they just get wrecked. And it's like, what exactly are you
I know
doing?
You're talking about. I can't remember. I know you're talking about.
I think they're like the Dragons or something. They're a blue team, but yeah, it's like scheduling D2 is not ideal, but there are some decent D2 teams out there. But sometimes when you go below D2, it's like, okay, what are we doing here? So I do think it makes sense for the SWAC to say, all right, you can schedule D2, but anything lower than that, we're not going to allow anymore. I think that's the right decision.
Yeah, I'd love to see more leagues go out and be authoritative about that. Say, this is what we're doing, especially now with the FCS playoff committee saying we're valuing, you're playing Division I, that can help you going forward. That just come out and say it, man, right? Let's just go out and put a rule down.
Yeah, and I wonder, too, if a conference I kind of doubt it, but if the Big Sky or the Valley also made a rule that says, hey, we're not going to schedule D2s anymore, at all, just all Division I. But I mean, especially with the Big Sky, some of those schools have a hard time filling out their schedule where they're kind of in a way forced to schedule a D2. But certainly there's a strategy when it comes to setting up your schedule. Less so for the SWAC because their focus is obviously on the Celebration Bowl. But for some of the other conferences, there's a magic there on how you set up your schedule to put your playoff resume in a good spot.
Are you a draft guy? Will you watch, or is I'll pay attention once I need to pay attention?
No, I like to watch it, especially day 3, just because there are some surprises out there from an FCS perspective where you get to hear some guys' names drafted and kind of update that ticker as far as number of FCS guys that hear their name selected. So yeah, I'll watch pretty much all of it on Saturdays, kind of hunker down and see how many FCS guys get selected. It's
great to see you, bud. Thanks so much for being flexible today. We'll talk again next week when it's all over and done with, okay?
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Sam Herder joins us each and every Monday. Give us the lowdown on the FCS ranks. Of course, there's going to be a bunch of guys that will either get free agent deals, as Sam was mentioned. A couple, I think, are going to get drafted. The Bison will have, this will be the last time they can count as FCS guys, and we'll put that number out there of the amount of guys that have been drafted since 2000. and 13. That was the first time I can remember we were paying. It was Billy Turner that got drafted, and it was 2014 when he was picked. Of the runaway train that has now happened. Now we're here 12 years later, and we're going to do this all over again. It's just kind of shake your head kind of deal at it. And now we'll be taking it, and we've seen where they've ranked with other group of 6 schools, and now that's going to be way ahead of them in terms of what they've produced for NFL draft-wise. And we'll get to do it all over again later this week. Going to be a lot of fun. All right, let's break. When I come back, we will rip the Band-Aid off because I've neglected to talk about it, and I've already got 3 emails about what is going down in Flushing Meadows. Got to get ready for this. Back on Hot Mic right after this. Everybody, you see Mr. Met there who's got nothing to smile about these days. So I said I wasn't going to talk about him until there was something worth talking about. That being my favorite baseball team, which it's my show. I can save 4 minutes for here to fill a segment. So over the weekend, Mets are playing the Cubs, which is already going to be a contentious 3 days in my household because my wife loves the Cubs. My son has certainly got on board that bandwagon. He cheers for the Mets, he tells me, when they don't play the Cubs. So the Mets lost by 1 million on Friday at Wrigley. Saturday, they get beat down again. Mind you, coming into the series in Chicago, they had just been swept by the Dodgers. Prior to that, they were swept by the A's. Prior to that, they lost 2 games to the Diamondbacks. So if I'm not a great math mind, that was 8. Friday made 9. Saturday was an even 10. So they had lost 10 in a row heading into yesterday. And then they got the lead yesterday. They got all of 1 run. Mind you, they're playing without Juan Soto. They're not healthy right now. This is a team that's supposed to score like 5 runs, 6 runs a game. And, of course, they brought in former Brewer great Devin Williams, who the Mets broke when Pete Alonso homered off him 2 years ago. Gives up a hit here in the bottom of the 9th to tie the game. And, of course, the game has to go to extra innings because the Mets can't score. They put 2 runners on in the top of the 10th. For some reason, they pitch to Nico Horner, who all he does is get contact with a runner at third and wins the game with a sac fly for their 11th loss in a row. It is the longest losing streak for this team since 2002. And let me tell you something. The 2002 Mets were bad. They were 2 years removed from the World Series, and I think they lost 90-some-odd games that year. There was a stretch in the early aughts, 2002, 2003. They hired Art Howe from the A's. They were horrible. 2004, really bad. They fired him. They brought in Willie Randolph, and then they were good for about 2 years. Now, this is a team that 2 years ago, 2 wins away from the World Series, right? Last year had the big lead, collapsed. We all know, missed the playoffs. They have a $370 million payroll, second only to the Dodgers, and they have the worst record in baseball. I had 2 or 3 emails already waiting for me over the weekend. There's only one I wanted to read, though. It's from my friend Chuck, who's a Braves fan. Somebody please check on Dom. He might be choking and needs someone to perform the Heimlich maneuver because the Mets are definitely choking right now. First, if you can't choke if you're in last. By the way, I have a spare Braves cap if you need one. Let me tell you something, what I do with that Braves hat. Atlanta, I think, is 8 games in front of the Mets already. It's April 20th. Could we be out of this already? There is one thing I'm clinging to. The Mets have a 9-game homestand starting tomorrow, which I told you, they play the Twins to start. Then they play the Rockies. Then they play the Nationals. None of those teams are any good. If they can't turn this around, and I mean, so they have 9 at home. You got to go 6-3, 7-2. Because I'll remind myself that they were 11 games under 500 2 years ago and made it all the way to the NLCS. I think they were 22-33, whatever, in the middle of May, late May. And then, man, they were unconscious after that in 2024. But it is bad right now. I mean, I cannot wait till tomorrow night when they play the Twins. Unfortunately, I can't watch the Mets broadcast the next 3 games because it's blacked out here because they're playing the Twins. So I'll watch Corey Pro. That's no problem. But I love watching the Mets broadcast. To hear the amount of booing that's going to be at Citi Field is off the charts. Francisco Lindor can't hit himself out of a paper bag right now. They're terrible. It's not all Soto's gone. They're just bad. And they're injured. Former Twin great Jorge Polanco can't get on the field. It is bad news. April 20th. I have not had one text message to my old man on the old Mets and Yankees. I am quiet on that. Let's break. We come back. We mentioned draft week is here. Guy that the architect of the Bison quarterback run, Randy Hedberg, will join us on what's going to happen with Cole Payton this weekend. That's coming up when we come back. Welcome back, everybody. Final half hour here on a busy Monday to start off the week. It is NFL Draft Week. Gets going Thursday night. You'll see it live on WDAY and on ESPN. All 7 rounds. Last year we heard North Dakota State's name called in the first round, and again in the 6th round. We anticipate we're going to hear it sometime Friday, maybe round 2 or round 3, and then again sometime, I imagine, round 4 on Saturday. Our next guest, he had his name called. I'm not going to tell you what year because then he's going to get mad at me, but he can ultimately gloat on me to start because he'll have this on me forever when I ask him about Cole Payton playing quarterback because he's going to be drafted into the NFL as a quarterback. We welcome on Randy Hedberg, former North Dakota State QB coach and a Hall of Famer to our show here to start the week. So you can just go ahead and gloat. You got that on me forever. You're never going to hold that over my head, I'm sure.
Well, no, that's never going to be mentioned again. And if that's because it's going to happen every time that Cole steps on the field. You're going to be reminded of it.
So between your text message about that and then how to fix the Class B basketball in North Dakota, those are the text messages I know I can count on from you for the rest of the time.
I still have issues with the 3 class, so we're going to have that takes longer than this.
We'll save that for another time then.
Yeah.
So tell me about what you've heard and then what expect here for Saturday, because this is going to be 5 for 5 here, man. That you're going to have 5 consecutive Bison quarterbacks get drafted.
Well, it's an exciting time, and I mentioned this to Cam and the previous quarterbacks, and I mentioned it to Cole also. You got to enjoy the process because it only happens one time. You only go through it the one time, so you got to enjoy it and take it all in and have a good time when it occurs. And I know Cole's excited about it. He's had a good preparation going into the draft. He's visited a number of places, and he's had people come in and work him out. And he's been on numerous Zoom calls with different teams. So it's an exciting time for him. And yeah, I don't know if he'll go. I think it's probably more. It could be a Friday thing, but I think it's more realistic. A Saturday pick might happen in his regard.
Randy, for people that don't know, and I know you got clued in on this, what are the visits like for quarterbacks? Are they having them up on the whiteboard? Are they getting to know them? What happens after pro day and prior to the draft with these visits that quarterbacks specifically go on?
Well, to work them out on the field, physically work them out on the field, they have to do it on NDSU's campus. So when he goes to Pittsburgh or Indianapolis, wherever he went, that's not a physical workout. That's all going to be mental.
Yeah.
He's meet the coaches, and they're going to put him on the board. And they usually, prior to the visit, will send him information in reference to their playbook, protections, what they're going to talk about. And one thing about Cole, he'll study it. And I know he said he was at the Colts here recently, and he thought his terms knocked it out of the park when he went to the visit, at Indianapolis. So that's kind of what happens. When they come in to work him out, the Eagles were in here a couple weeks ago, and I watched the workout that they had with them. They had 3 coaches here working them out, all obviously working quarterback type people that worked with them. But previous to the on-field workout, they had him in a classroom just talking through protections. I know with Carson, when Carson was coming into the draft, the Rams came in, the Eagles came in, and they put him on the board, and they had some information prior, so he kind of had an idea what it was. But just talking through protections, because that's a big thing. Pass protection, he's got to know that stuff, and that's a big part of the quarterback position, especially at the NFL level.
How much of that, when they're going in on the whiteboard, is that just you got to memorize that? It's just like, hey, they're going to ask you got to know it right away, correct?
Yeah, exactly. They're looking for your processing ability.
Man.
Just like we were at the college level,
Man.
Dom. That's one thing that's really important. And one thing that we do at NDSU in the quarterback position, they don't have a lot of time at the line of scrimmage to make those calls, protection calls, and run checks. And they're making points in the run game and also in the protection game. So it's a lot of things happening.
Does it seem to you, I mean, you follow this as well, that his name has certainly gotten some more heat over the last couple weeks, or does it just appear that way?
No, I think that's true. I saw, we've all seen the national media and what they've talked about and all. There's a number of quarterbacks that, that have played at the Power 4 level, that probably have had more starts than Cole. Yeah. Cole's had 13 starts, but he's been in a program for 5 years. I think that carries a lot of weight too. He hasn't bounced around from team to team. And I know that's an important thing at the pro level. Mm-hmm. Whether it's an offensive lineman or a quarterback or a defensive lineman, whatever, if they've stayed in one school during their time, I think it speaks well to the NFL people that they know a system. Whereas, if they bounce around transfer-wise, they have different systems, and they don't have it all down yet in one particular one. His
athleticism, Randy, gets brought up often as well from NFL teams or NFL draft gurus on that will get him on the field. He can't run around like he did in college, though. That's not going to work at the next level.
Yeah, no, that's not going to happen. That's one thing, going back to the fall, Dom, and I kind of helped the Payton family a little bit vet through some agents.
Yeah.
The one thing I stress to the agents that I talked to in reference to Cole and talking to mom and dad, Peyton, that Cole wanted to be a quarterback. He didn't want to be known as a quarterback / tight end or whatever it was. And I made reference to that to the agents I was talking to, that this young man's a quarterback, and that's what he wants to be known as and wants to be drafted as. And it worked out well. He's got good representation, and he's with a quarterback guy, which has helped him immensely.
I know you're going to be awfully humble on this, but tell me your feelings that you're going to have 5 straight guys get drafted here over a 10-year span.
Well, yeah, it's quite humbling in the fact that, you look back on it and I've done a number of interviews in reference to that number. And, the thing that's interesting about it, those young men, all of them were 5-year guys other than Trey. And all, and I think they've all done well, at the next level. They made a career for themselves and they made a living, and and now Trey and Easton and Carson, they're vested now as NFL. Cam will get there; he'll be in his second year, and then we'll see where Cole goes. But I think that's really, really a big deal from a health standpoint. And all with it, they're doing well. Carson's coming back, Trey's coming back. And I'm going to visit with Easton actually this afternoon, so we'll see where he's at with things. But it's pretty neat. It doesn't happen across the country very often, but we're very fortunate at NDSU that our system allows quarterbacks to be highlighted.
I know the Paytons are going to have a draft party this weekend. You're going to be there. What do you think that emotion's going to be like once it actually happens sometime on Saturday?
Well, I'm excited. The family, I go back to the recruitment process.
I remember.
Cole,
yeah.
That was during COVID and everything. And, I didn't get to see him throw in person, which was, I always like to watch quarterbacks throw in person, but I couldn't do that because of COVID at that point. But the young man just kept growing and growing, and he's one of my favorites, actually, from the whole process and how it worked out. And he's just a humble young man. It's kind of interesting. I was thinking about this the other day, Dom. we're standing at practice here about a week or so ago, Cole and I, and Mason Miller was there, and was with the Lions, and I can't remember, somebody else was there, but we're talking, and Cole was so respectful of everything. He's just a quality young man, and that's one thing I think you can say about the previous 4 quarterbacks that you referred to. You know, I think they're very humble, and they like their beginnings, and they really respect what happened for them at NDSU, and I think that's really important.
I remember, I think the first text message you ever sent me about Cole Payton was that fall, because obviously you guys weren't playing, and you said, "What do you think of this guy?" I'm like, "Well, he looks the part," and I was doing the same thing you were doing, just watching on a video stream of him tearing up, an Omaha football before obviously things became reality later that year.
Yeah, I can still remember my wife and I watched the championship game, his high school championship game, his senior year. West Side was playing. It was in obviously late November. We watched it on our computer at our house. They had 4 Division I athletes on that team at West Side when he was a senior. And very good football team, and they dominated that year in or Nebraska football.
Man, it's just wild. I'm obligated to ask, though. I think you told me a new element of your draft day story the other day when I saw you up at practice, because you had other teams that were talking to you. Because that's the thing. When I talked to Cody Mauka on his draft night, that Tampa had shown some interest, but not a ton, and they ended up picking him. Was that what you remember? Because were you thinking another team was going to take you?
Well, here's kind of how it went. It's kind of interesting. People ask me, who do you think is going to pick Cole? Well, I have no idea. That it's such a crapshoot when you get into the draft. And I thought Green Bay was going to take me actually in the draft, because they came and watched me play basketball when I was in college and all. And that's probably why they didn't draft me, because they watched a hooper probably. But yeah, they came and watched me, and then the Bucks, picked me, which was kind of odd because I didn't have that much contact with Buccaneers. But anyway. How was the basketball night? What'd you shoot that night? I think I shot a lot, for one. Probably didn't make a lot. But, yeah, I didn't take the fouls home. I know that. So I used them. What are you hearing on Bryce Lance as well? We're expecting sometime Friday for old number 5, correct? I think Bryce, I think he's really helped himself. I think he'll be a Friday pick. I think when you can run that fast and you're that type of size, I mean, it's pretty impressive. I never, through my years having been with Christian Watson his entire career at NDSU, and then Bryce's entire career, I didn't think Bryce was as fast as Christian, and I actually said that to his mom and dad. And I said it to Trey. I talked to Trey the other day, and Trey kind of laughed because he felt the same way. But then he knew once he ran that time at the combine, that was pretty impressive. And that was an eye opener. Opened a lot of eyes in the NFL world. No doubt about it. It's great to see you, bud. Thanks so much for doing this. Safe travels to Omaha this week. Have a great time, and we'll catch up down the road. Okay. Okay, Dom. Thank you. There he goes. There he is, Randy Hedberg, the Hall of Famer, joining us, former Bison QB coach, who can rightfully say the architect of all this. I mean, I distinctly remember 10 years ago, he and I doing this exact interview about Carson Wentz, thinking how big this is going to be. Carson Wentz is going to be a top 2 NFL draft pick. And then it happened again that Easton Stick got drafted in the 5th round. Then Trey Lance goes to the number 3 overall pick. And then Cam Miller gets drafted last year in the 6th round. And now Cole Payton is going to get drafted out of NDSU at quarterback. It's one thing offensive line has been unbelievable. They're going to have a second wide receiver drafted high in the last 4 years. Come on. It's just, you shake your head at it. It's going to be a fun next few days, and looking forward to get everybody pumped up for that as we get later on in the week. Good stuff there. All right, we'll take our final break. We'll come back. We'll put a bow on things and get you ready for a pretty good Sports Monday. We got a late night Sports Monday coming with the Wild and the Wolves. Hot Mike on WDAY Extra. We'll wrap right after this. All right, wrapping things up here on a Monday. Tomorrow, Cole Payton will join us
Looking forward to our conversation with the former Bison QB in anticipation of the NFL draft. So make sure you join us tomorrow for that. A couple of other fun guests we'll have and get you ready for a busy Sports Tuesday. It's going to be a team no sleep kind of show with the Wild playing tonight and the Wolves. Wolves not starting until probably 10. Although, depending on how the game goes, it might be early to bed kind of night if it doesn't go so well. Let's get a few emails in here before we say goodbye. Good morning, Dom. Just curious on what the NFL scouts have seen in Cole Payton that's upped his stock so much. I'm the biggest Bison room out there, but if the scouts looked at the Youngstown, UND, and Illinois State tape, it just says rush him and he can't react. I'm still stinging for how the season went so sideways after the game in Brookings. Too much maybe on my end to think straight. Never got an answer from the coaches on if he was healthy or not either. All right, let's take the last part. I asked Cole that. Cole said he was fine. Video evidence might dispute that. I think, heart of hearts, I don't think he was 100%. I think we can definitely ascertain that. As opposed to the other comments on there about if you rush him and he can't react, I think that's obviously something that they have tried to address during the pre-draft process. But he needs work. There's no doubt on that anybody who's going to take him knows he needs time to develop. He's started 13 games. So it's definitely a flyer in the sense that he's not ready to play quarterback in the National Football League right away. But his athleticism and his upside, I know people hate that word, I'm not a big fan of it either, says that there is opportunity out there for him to get on the field. Whether it's in that Taysom Hill package, which again, I'm not a fan of that. And you heard Jake Heaps, his QB coach, and we're working on hopefully getting Jake back on sometime this week as well. Basically throw that out, that he's a better athlete than Taysom Hill. That's according to Jake Heaps, that they can use him in different ways as a quarterback out there. That's just what we've been told in this whole process and leading up. Good morning, Dom. I think Sam Herter is great. To be honest, I'm more interested in hearing about what's going on in the G6 now. I definitely tune into a group of 6 segment on your show. What's going on with the other Mountain West teams? Who are the G6 playoff contenders? Probably room for both Sam and that. We are planning on that. I have a couple feelers out that hopefully by, I'd say, middle of next month that we're going to be rolling with that. I've heard feedback that people certainly like having Sam on, and I'm not ready to cut ties on that because we still are covering FCS football here. University of North Dakota is in our viewing area. We're not going to ignore what's going on there, nor South Dakota State, frankly. And I think Bison fans are lying to themselves if they're not keeping an eye on what's going on in Brookings and Grand Forks this upcoming year. I just don't think you're being honest with yourselves, at least for this upcoming year. I can't say 5 years down the line, but I'm saying for this fall, people are going to know how the Jacks and UND are doing. So, but I appreciate that. We're working on it, and hopefully I'll have something to announce fairly soon on that in our weekly group of 6 Mountain West kind of deal. On that. So looking forward to that. Appreciate the emails coming in. Let's do some What to Watch before we get out of here. All right, we mentioned it. Wolves going 9:30 tonight, probably 9:50 on NBC. The Wild and the Stars at 8:30 on ESPN. We'll see if Minnesota can go up 2-0 on Dallas. And the Boston Marathon, one of my favorite sporting events of the year, wrapping up now. That is on ESPN2. As we leave you, what a great scene last night in San Antonio. All the fans were in different colored shirts, and they got to see Wemby do his thing to score 35 in a playoff opener as the Spurs beat the Blazers last night. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody, on this Monday. Have a great day as the draft gets closer. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Thanks for watching, everybody.